Welcome. I am Don Falk, Executive Director of TNDC, Tenderloin Neighborhood Development Corporation. TNDC provides social services and affordable housing in the Tenderloin and throughout the city and county of San Francisco. We now own 30 buildings with 2,500 units affordable to San Francisco's most vulnerable residents. We are standing amid a massive adaptive reuse of a building that was originally erected in 1910. When it's finished, 172 chronically homeless individuals will live here, and we will also be developing a wellness center, a community clinic of 11,000 square feet where some 4,000 formerly homeless people will receive medical services. If not for the Stimulus Act, none of this would be happening. The affordable housing capital that TNDC typically accesses could have and would have financed this project, but for the financial crash of 2.5 years ago. And only because those funds were replaced by stimulus funding are we able to undertake this project. This represents a vision not only of TNDC, but also of the city's Mayor's Office of Housing and Department of Public Health. And I'd like to call to the podium the Mayor of San Francisco, Ed Lee.
Thank you, Don. Isn't this a wonderful place? We're sitting right here in the middle of our Tenderloin community, watching exactly how 174 supportive housing units are about to happen. And we're excited, and we've done it the right way. When I saw this opportunity to get on my calendar, I rushed over here for many reasons. The project itself, the neighborhood that is being built in, but I also want to personally have the opportunity to thank our Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi, because you've been so instrumental in guiding us, in helping us identify these funds, and in making sure we do the right thing, that is carry out every condition that the stimulus monies have in order to do it right, and this project is doing it absolutely right. Last night, I joined over 400 volunteers to go spread out throughout the whole city counting the homeless population. And we yet to have those numbers, but we know going out that that's a very serious effort to count the homeless and to make sure that we know what we're doing in terms of ending homelessness. We now have a federal government that's come out with its own end homeless program, and we have stimulus monies by which to do with. And this housing is unique because it will be supportive housing. It will have the services attached to the housing. And that's been, if you read the federal program, if you read our San Francisco End Homeless program, you will see this is the core of the answer to ending homelessness, is to build these kinds of housing and make sure we get the services to attach with it. So I am joining this lovely group of people because not only are they building this housing, and not only are they doing it with all the conditions, but as you can see in back of us, on the side of us, we have a workforce that's going to work. We are making people have that opportunity to go to work and to help rehab these buildings, doing them in the historical, careful fashion it's done, and using $50 million of reinvestment stimulus monies in a responsible way to get this done. I am, again, so thankful to our Congresswoman for helping us get this started. And you can see lives will be literally changed because of this project. And I can guarantee you, Congresswoman, we'll see this all the way through for you and for us. Thank you very much.
I'd now like to call to the podium one of the workers and beneficiaries of stimulus funds, Mark Grayson.
Hi, thank you. My name's Mark Graven. I'm a carpenter foreman here on this site, and I was asked to speak because about 1.5 years ago, I didn't have a job and didn't have many prospects of one. So my wife and I were living up the coast in Fort Bragg, and a lumber mill closed, the fishing fleet was grounded, and construction just dried up. So we made a choice to move back to San Francisco, and I was lucky enough to hire on with Cahill. And thanks to projects like this, you know, I can look forward to continued employment. And I'm very thankful for the stimulus money. So thank you.
And I'd now like to call forth another worker, Tanya Lewis.
Good morning. Greetings to Madam Pelosi and the distinguished guests. I would like to start by saying welcome to 220 Golden Gate. It's under construction right now for the historical retrofit and the restoration. This site's been going on for about a year, and I say we have about another 18 months to go. This project here was funded by the Recovery Act and the Reinvestment Act, which I believe was signed in 2009. And however, I'm lost here. I'm sorry, everybody. I try to come from the heart, which I am. I don't know if I introduced myself, but I am Tanya Lewis, born and raised San Francisco native. I'm a single mother. I have a 10-year-old son, Asante. I also have 17 years of experience in the carpentry field, and I truly feel and believe that I represent the women in the workforce. I am proudly employed by Cahill, which is a third-generation San Francisco construction company, and they have been very good to me, and I appreciate this opportunity. And once again, we need more work for the future because this is our future. We need to help the homeless. We need these clinics for their health, and we need places for them to rest their heads so they can have dignity. Thank you so much.
And it's now my honor to introduce the House Democratic Leader, Nancy Pelosi.
Thank you very much, Don Falk, for the invitation to be here today, for your leadership over the years, for the Tenderloin Neighborhood Development Corporation, for its tremendous leadership. I'm honored to be here with Mayor Lee, with Phil Ting. I want to acknowledge also our former mayor, Gavin Newsom, who was so much a part of making the pitch for this particular initiative, demonstrating the unity in the community for going forward with this in the competition for dollars. Mayor Lee knows about it from the hat he wore before and the hat he wears now. He's already been to Washington, D.C. to appeal for funds for other projects that are worthy in terms of meeting the needs of people, but also worthy in terms of their national significance. And this project, 220 Golden Gate, surely does that. Listening to Mark Graven and Tanya Lewis, we know that as they speak for the construction workers who are here about building this facility, they're also building a community because this will have an impact in the community, but they're also building lives. I think they see that in what they do. And not only their own lives through their jobs, but in bringing, as the mayor described and as Don described, a continuum of care here that is very important. It's not only housing, which is very significant. It is housing which respects the dignity of every person. When you look at the renderings of what is to come here and its historic significance, it says to people who come here, you are to be treated with respect and welcomed in that way. When you look at the care that will be given to the people who are here and those who will come here for that care, it recognizes the diversity of our community. And so, again, will be more effective. We have two other special guests here, Michael and Asante, and I want them to come up here because they're, shall we say, learning in another way today, not being in the classroom. And I want them to know a little of the history. You've heard it said that, 1910? 1910, this building was created. For decades. 220 Golden Gate was synonymous with community in terms of the YMCA being here and all that that meant. And now there's a need for addressing the needs of chronically homeless people, and we have this transition of purpose, but always with a sense of community. 2 years ago, when President Obama became President of the United States, he made his inaugural address, and he said, "I want swift, bold action now to address the needs of the American people." 1 week and 1 day after that speech, the House of Representatives passed the Recovery Act. Then it became law, and a matter of weeks after that, he signed the bill. I tell you this because this was a bold, swift action that put resources there to meet the imagination, the creativity, the needs of the American people. And San Francisco has always been in the lead of being a model of proposing initiatives that, again, are of national significance and so worthy of national support. So because of his speech, our swift action, but most of all because of the sense of community and the opportunity that the city officials in San Francisco saw here, and because of all the ongoing leadership of the Tenderloin Neighborhood Development Corporation, people's lives will be changed. People's lives will be changed. So when you hear speeches and you wonder, what's that all about? Well, President Obama's speech is now being translated into a better life for many more people who both will live here or receive services here. So this is something called the Recovery Act, and it was very important. It's part of a number of things the Recovery Act did for San Francisco, whether it's Doyle Drive or the Transbay Terminal, so many other things as we deal also with bringing funds for Baby Hunters Point and working through what's happening on Treasure Island. All of it's about creating jobs, giving people the opportunity to reach their fulfillment, creating jobs, growing our economy, reducing our deficit, and taking us to a better place. And all of that is about the future, and the future belongs to you. So I wanted you to know when you're here today, that you are directly linked to the speech that President Obama made, and you're directly linked to the difference it will make in the lives of the people who will live here. In fact, in a very, very beautiful, historic way, and a way that we all can be very, very proud of, and maybe others throughout the country will take our lead. It will mean a lot for the neighborhood, a lot for our city, and it's really very special for us that Asante and Michael are here with us today. So thank you. Thank you, kids. Thank you. I don't know if they want to say anything, but Michael, you want to say anything? Michael, sure. He's going to take a report back to school.
How does everybody here feel about gun control?
That is Michael's project for school. We had that discussion.
Questions? Anybody? Okay.
We talked to Michael earlier because he's writing a project on gun control, and the mayor and I talked to him about the importance of gun safety. And sadly, in Asante's life, his mother has had a personal experience losing her husband in that regard. So again, every time we talk about a policy, we have to know what it means, translates into people's lives, and what the challenges that we face. And San Francisco has long been a place where gun safety is important to us. Asante has something to say.
I need to talk about what's been going on with these schools. Jerry Brown is supposed to be making cuts of us, but I don't understand why you're cutting us, because when you're gone, we're going to be here and we're not going to know what we're doing. So it doesn't make any sense. You look dumb, okay?
Good. So did you two gentlemen ever think about going into politics? Maybe? Okay. Well, on the way to their political careers. No, Asante's absolutely right. Nothing, Asante and Michael, nothing brings more money to the Treasury than investing in education. Any economist will tell you, right, Mr. Mayor? That is an investment that pays off, not only in terms of the lives of the people who receive education, but also dollars to the Treasury. So it's, as a personal issue as to what it means for people, it's self-evident we must educate our people. If we don't, we are also losing money to the Treasury, so it's a practical matter. And as the President said in his speech, President Obama the other day, some of these cuts will result in making matters worse. Now, I'm not perfectly familiar because I just got home last night with the particulars of what Governor Brown is going to do, but I know that he is committed to the future and that education is essential to innovation. That's what the President talked about. It's essential to innovation. Most importantly, it's essential to young people reaching their aspirations. But thank you for being here and bringing your very thoughtful challenges to those of us in government. And I hope that I can see you in Washington, D.C. sometime, and you'll see the past there, the history of our country, which we respect, but we talk about the future, and that is who you are. So thank you, Asante, and thank you, Michael. Great. Now, will you come back when this is all finished and we have the ribbon cutting and all the rest of that? You'll be taller. Hopefully the rest of us won't be shorter, and then we go forward. But let's thank our construction workers who, again, are not only building they're growing a community and helping to build people's lives. Thank you for what you're doing. I just want to tell you one other little fact. I think that it was touched upon by Don, but under the Recovery Act, $54 million in Recovery Act funds this project will receive $54 million through loans and direct support. It makes up nearly 60% of the total cost of the project. It will create 390 jobs during construction. It will result in real change in the Tenderloin neighborhood. As you know, 174 units for chronically homeless people and a health and wellness center and support services for the residents and the neighbors. So Don, are you willing to take any questions? Any questions on the subject?
Yeah, probably on Asante's question. Governor Brown's budget proposes massive cuts to the social safety net. I wanted to see Leader Pelosi, what you think of that. And is that a budget that Democrats can get behind?
Well, let's just say that Democrats and all Americans must get behind reducing the deficit. With all that we owe our children in terms of their health, their education, et cetera, the economic security of their families, we also owe them not to heap mountains of debt on them and limit their prospects as a community and a society later. So there has to be a way to reduce the deficits in the states and nationally. How you do that, how you create a budget, Asante, a budget should be a statement of our values. What's important for us must be reflected in how we allocate our money, our resources. On the federal level and on the state level, there are big decisions to be made. And again, you must balance how do we invest in the future, creating jobs, and reducing the deficit as we strengthen the middle class. I haven't seen fully the particulars or had a conversation with the governor about this since he released his budget, but I understand that the mayors have. The mayors have, and the idea of eliminating the redevelopment, and et cetera, I'm sure the mayor will address that. But this is the debate we have to have. How do we state our values, act upon them in a budget while recognizing that we must reduce the deficit? But that, again, to not invest in education is to not reduce the deficit. It's a false economy, in my view.
Congresswoman Pelosi is absolutely correct, and as you all know, I was one of 10 mayors throughout the state that met with the governor, and we were beginning to understand what his realignment details were on the budget, but more importantly, the lifeblood of a lot of our jobs, a lot of the new jobs in San Francisco has been as a result of our use of responsible use of the redevelopment agencies. And so you are talking about completing the other half of Mission Bay, where just last month Salesforce bought 14 acres of that area because they believed that the redevelopment monies that we had used to build the infrastructure was so attractive that they're going to invest their private monies to build their workforce down there. That's been the story of our redevelopment agencies across all of it, whether it's Hunters Point Shipyard, where it's the Slage Lock site at Visitation Valley, Candlestick Park, Treasure Island for sure is being, redevelopment monies are being leveraged. And this is the message that we brought to the governor is, while there may be ideas about getting some money out of places where they haven't gotten it before, be careful. The president said, be careful where you cut, because redevelopment is not just about the money that they have, it's what they're able to leverage in the private sector. They get 10 times what they put out. And that's what's going to be used to revitalize our mid-market, attract more businesses, keep companies like Twitter in our town, as well as attract the new biotech and green technology jobs. So it is all about being careful and well thought out as we approach our statement of values in the state budget and in our local budget.
Any other question? But again, we wish the governor much success because he has a tremendous job. I mean, we have one of the biggest budget deficits in the country. In fact, the West Coast accounts for nearly a third. The three states, Washington, Oregon, and California, account for about a third of the deficits of all of the states. And in Washington, D.C., the debate is let them go bankrupt on the one hand. Well, we can't do that. And so how do we, again, in a responsible adult way, deal with all of this? It's the legitimate debate of government. Yes, Matt.
On the theme of being careful and well thought out, we're watching what's happening in Egypt right now. And I think a number of people are wondering, why do we support strongman governments that lead to revolution that ultimately don't serve our interests?
Well, as you probably know, I have been a human rights activist for my whole life, and in Congress it has been a fight for many years, whether it's human rights in China or wherever. And while I believe that it is a part of we have a values-based foreign policy that supports human rights throughout the world, sometimes if the country serves some other national security issue to us, it's a calibration that we have to make in our approach to the countries. I think that the Secretary of State has made some very powerful statements. I too have said, I have tweeted that they should be opening up the communication and not whatever it is, all of the new technologies, the new means of communication that they have shut down. I don't want to name some because they should open them all, and they should. None of us wants to see violence, whether in terms of protest or in terms of reacting to protest. But it's a very interesting time, and the people of Egypt have to make their decision. Again, yes, that's been the history. We have tolerated more human rights abuses or lack of pluralism in societies, tolerating another voice in the political system. Look at China. Iran. Well, I think we are contending with Iran in a different way. Oh, well, now you're going back. Okay, yeah. Historically, yes, you could name many, but the awareness of human rights and the rest has certainly intensified since then. But what is exciting is a great deal of what has happened in San Francisco, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or whatever, have been part of democratizing the world, where people can connect with each other and communicate with each other in real time and act upon that communication to speak in large numbers about their personal freedom. Some of these roads lead back to San Francisco. And I was very proud also that when the president had his conversation on YouTube, that some San Francisco Bay Area young people were part of the questioning of the president. So we recognize that communication is different, it's in real time, it makes a difference, and the communication of it to the rest of the world is important. We see that not only is the Egyptian government shutting down communication internally, but they have shut down some of the television coverage of what is going on there now. Well, I think the United States response is, I think, appropriately calibrated by the Secretary of State in her comments about rejecting violence on any side, but especially by the use of force of the government, which has a heavy weight in all of that, and also calling for the opening up of Twitter, Facebook, all of the communications, and to have something evolve. It's interesting because the government was saying it's the Muslim Brotherhood. It doesn't really, they may be a part of it. It's a spontaneous, the new media has made it possible to have a spontaneous outpouring of people without necessarily having any particular group lead the way. And so it's legitimate in terms of not one force in the community against another, but the people speaking out. But again, there's so much that we really don't know yet about what is going on there. We'll probably know a lot more by the end of the day when this demonstration is finished. But thank you for your interest in what is happening in the world and for your interest in our having, again, a values-based foreign policy. I don't think any of us have ever visited Egypt without talking to President Mubarak about human rights and pluralism in Egypt, about freedom of the press and the rest, as well as when he has visited the United States.
One more question?
Just a follow-up, could you comment on the fact that in Uganda, a gay activist was killed after his name was put on the front page of the Rolling Stone? And can you speak out against violence, even in terms of the rhetoric that we use in our political discussion? In particular, and I don't mean to go on, the person in Uganda was a gay activist who was particularly targeted by the evangelists that were coming and telling him that they should pass the bill that says you should kill gays. So should there ever be capital punishment for your sexual orientation?
But let me just enlarge the issue for a moment, because as speaker and before then, I had the occasion to visit many countries in the world, in the Middle East, in other places, and in Africa, the whole world. And what I came back and said was, in every place I went, I visited, I met with women, I met with young people, not just the leaders of the government. I came back and I said, young people in the world are weary of war and weary of these oppressive actions. They see it as a way for governments to have an excuse not to create jobs and do the things that will make the future better for them, but instead as a way for them to either have a foreign enemy or a domestic enemy to consolidate their power. And there are drastic cultural differences. So what I would like to see, and President Kennedy, over 50 years, no, not over 50 years ago, but nearly 50 years ago. 50 years ago was his inauguration. Sometime since then, he made a speech about the end of war. It's really a ridiculous concept when you think of it, that with all of the sophistication and communication that we have and the rest, that we would even be engaged in war, or that people could devalue the worth of another person because they're not in agreement with them culturally, religiously, or whatever it is. So I think we have to take the debate to a much bigger place about the resolution of conflict, whether it's between nations or within nations, and the respect that all religions give for the dignity and worth of every person, and how do our attitudes and public policies support that, and make it unacceptable and intolerable for any other actions to receive any acceptability. So we have an interesting time. But I said I'm hopeful because I have confidence in young people. They think in a completely different way about these things. You know, a while back in a previous administration, we weren't going to communicate with this country and we weren't going to communicate with that country. And for young people, it's ridiculous. They were communicating in real time, across borders, constantly, and sharing, again, their impatience with the status quo. And every time you think that one more act of violence, as one philosopher said, every time you think one more act of violence is going to end violence, you just keep that flywheel of violence going. So we've got to think in a bigger way. This episode in Egypt certainly gives people the opportunity to say, let's talk. Let's talk. So in any event, with that, again, I want to take us right back to where we are here, because this sense of community, this respect for the dignity and worth of every person by the housing they will receive, the care that they will give, the reflection of how we have our cultural differences, and that is reflected in what is being done here, I think is really a tribute not only to Don, who's been working on, we've had many such groundbreakings, ribbon cuttings, and all the rest over time, but also to the members of the board, the private sector entities, whether it's financial services or whatever, who have been involved in this. We're grateful to all of you for making this day possible as well. And of course, very proud of the over $50 million that is coming from the President Obama, the Recovery Act, and very honored that Michael and Asante are with us today, as well as all of you. So thank you all very much. We'll be watching.